I spent $28,000 covering my family's bills. Then they told me I'd never help them. I brought a binder of receipts to dinner, proof of every transfer, every sacrifice, every moment I chose them over myself. My reward? A blank stare and a sentence that froze the room. We never received a single dollar from you. That was the night I walked out, and everything changed. If you've ever been the reliable one, drop a comment, hit like and subscribe for more powerful Reddit stories. Hi, I'm Max, 28. And 3 Sundays ago, I walked out of my parents' house with a grocery bag, a binder full of receipts, and the quietest kind of fury you'll ever feel. It wasn't supposed to go like that. I thought maybe, just maybe, laying it all out would make something click. That they'd look at 9 pages of transfers and say, "Oh God, we didn't know. Thank you." I didn't get that. What I got was a blank stare and a sentence that made the air turn cold. We never received a single dollar from you. Let me rewind. If you'd asked anyone, co-workers, neighbors, the guy who fixes my brakes, what kind of person Max is, they'd probably say reliable. I'm the bring an extra charger to the wedding guy. The one who sets reminders for everyone's birthdays and brings Tupperware to potlucks. I don't make waves. I carry umbrellas. I don't complain, I over-prepare. But being the responsible one, it's a trap in disguise, especially when you're the oldest son in a family that worships charm over character. My brother Cole, he's charm distilled. If charm were a cryptocurrency, Cole would be a billionaire. You know the type. Walks in late, leaves early, has big ideas and vague income streams, but somehow always lands on his feet. My parents love him, like fan club levels. Everything he touches is gold. Every mishap is adorable. Every debt is someone else's problem, usually mine. For years I picked up the pieces. I didn't think of it as sacrifice. It felt like love. You help the people you love, right? That's what they taught me. So I paid the bills, fixed the leaks, covered the gaps, quietly, steadily, like a faucet that never turns off. But the faucet started to rust. It started small. Missed dinners with friends. A trip I canceled because of timing, but really because $300 went to their power bill that week. Then one day, my card got declined for a sandwich at a deli. I had $4 in checking. I checked my bank app. The last 4 transactions were transfers to my family. That's when I started counting. By the time we hit Mom's birthday, the lemon cleaner, the roasted chicken, the "you'll never be as good as your brother" laugh, I had numbers. Concrete, undeniable numbers, over $28,000. That's not help. That's not love. That's a whole-ass system. And the system ran on my silence. I stood up that night, shaking a little, and I said something I never imagined I'd say. "Then tell him to pay all the bills. I'm not sending money anymore. You'd think I detonated a bomb. You'd think I flipped the dinner table." All I did was draw a line. But the fallout was just beginning. I didn't plan to bring a binder to dinner. I'm not that dramatic. I'm not a speech guy. But after the birthday debacle, I took a sick day. Not because I was ill, but because I was unraveling, and opened my bank statements. It was like scrolling through a graveyard of moments I forgot to claim for myself. Grocery transfers on nights I skipped dinner, rent help while I juggled overdue car repairs. I found the plumber deposit, the car tire emergency, the so-called Cole certification fee, which never resulted in a job but did somehow result in Cole going to Coachella. I printed the statements. I highlighted amounts. I put them in chronological order, 3-hole punched, and dropped them into a binder that cost me $1.89. I held it like armor. Not to attack, just to prove. Just to say, this happened. I was here. I existed in this family too. By Sunday, the guilt machine had shifted gears. Mom had texted a smiling face after asking me to bring my checkbook. Dad threw in a "let's keep it light, kiddo." I parked 2 houses down because I knew what walking up that driveway meant. It meant no more pretending. No more, "Sure, just this once." No more, "It's not that big a deal." I walked in with paper towels. Because I am still me. They were already in meeting mode. The table was covered in envelopes. Mom had a calculator. Cole was leaning on the kitchen counter like a guy waiting for Uber Eats. Dad had that serious face he gets when he thinks he's being strategic. "We've been running the numbers," he said. "We're thinking everyone contributes monthly, just until we stabilize." Everyone. Like we'd all been equally floating this thing. Like I hadn't been funding this circus for years. That's when I pulled out the binder. I said, "Before we talk about a plan, can we talk about the last 4 years?" Mom actually blinked like she didn't know what 4 years I meant. When she asked, "What money?" I thought she was joking. But the silence that followed? It was thick. Like nobody wanted to be the first to admit the house was built on my deposits. I slid my phone across the table. Bank app's open. The transfers are there. Notes, dates, totals. I also printed it, if that helps. Dad looked like I'd farted in church. "This is disrespectful," he said. "What's disrespectful is rewriting my life while asking for my checkbook," I replied. Calm, even. My hands were on the table, no raised voice. Just receipts. Cole finally looked up. "Dude, why are you making this weird? It's family." "Exactly," I said. "And family says thank you. Family doesn't erase your help. Family doesn't pretend the guy who's been funding the background is just background." Mom clutched the edge of the binder like it might explode. "After all we've done for you," she began. There it was. The greatest hits album. Dad added, "So what do you want? A parade?" I looked at both of them. "I want boundaries. No more automatic transfers. If you need help, you ask. You accept no for an answer." "You can't do this," Mom snapped. "I can," I said, "and I am." I left the binder on the counter. Left the paper towels too. Let them figure out which was the bigger threat. The fallout was nuclear. Before I even made it back to my apartment, my phone was vibrating non-stop like it was trying to shake free of the center console. Missed calls, voicemails. One from Dad. "You made your mother cry, Max. Is that what you wanted?" Another from Mom, 3 minutes long and mostly sniffles, punctuated with, "This isn't who you are." I didn't answer any of them. I made pasta, ate it over the sink, and stared at the binder like it might hiss at me. It didn't. It just sat there, silently holding the last 4 years of my life like a filing cabinet of invisible labor. By midnight, I had 47 unread messages. Some angry, some pleading. Some that sounded like corporate scripts for apologies I was supposed to deliver. Mom said, "You're confused. Come back and talk this out." Dad wrote a group text about entitlement and forgetting where you came from. Cole? He just sent a text that read, "You really think this makes you the hero?" I turned off my phone, set its screen down, and went to bed at 9:30. It was the most rebellious thing I've ever done. And I slept. 8 hours. Dreamless. Full body reset. First time in months. But when I woke up, the world had already started writing a different version of the story. Monday morning, my cousin texted, "Heard you blew up at dinner. You okay?" A neighbor forwarded me a screenshot from Mom's Facebook, a vague post about sacrifices parents make and the children who forget. The comments were full of prayer hands and kids these days emojis. The narrative machine was on fire, and I was its villain of the week. What shocked me most wasn't the anger. It was the speed of revision. In under 48 hours, I went from reliable Max to ungrateful Max. The binder? Never mentioned. The money? Suddenly downgraded from never happened to gifts from a loving son. My insistence on boundaries was reframed as cruelty. "You never said you were struggling," Mom texted, as if the only acceptable version of asking for help was bleeding in public. At work, I did what I always do when I feel powerless. I made order. I scanned every page of the binder and saved it to a private Google Drive. Then I opened my banking app, went to scheduled transfers, and hit cancel on 3. Utilities, groceries, gas. The app asked, "Are you sure?" I hit yes. My chest tightened, then loosened, like someone had finally unzipped the anxiety I'd been wearing. The calls didn't stop. Mom started alternating between emotional voicemails and subtle bribes. We can start fresh. Maybe we just agree on a number. $300 a month? Dad tried logic. We're a unit, Max. Everyone does their part. Cole. He sent a Venmo request for $400 with the note. Rent. Last time, I swear. I hit decline. He sent a question mark. I didn't answer. By Wednesday, Aunt Rita invited me to coffee. She opened with, "Not an ambush, I promise." It was an ambush. She went into a speech that sounded like it had been rehearsed in the car mirror. Let's not burn bridges over a misunderstanding. What misunderstanding? I asked. She gave me the smile people use on children. You embarrassed your parents. They feel attacked. They felt attacked by math, I said. She blinked like I slapped her. You're being unkind. No, I'm being accurate. I paid for my own coffee. Left before she could make accuracy feel like cruelty. By Friday, the group chat pinged again. Family meeting, Sunday, be there. No please, no preamble. Just a command tossed into the middle of a digital living room like I was still a member of the unpaid staff. I stared at the message for a while. I typed, I won't be there. Then I hit send before fear could backspace it. The replies came in like a flood. Mom, you think you're better than us now? Dad, don't forget who raised you. Cole, you've always been jealous, bro. Sad. I muted the chat. Then I made a grocery list. Not a guilt-fueled survival list. A real one. I bought things I liked, things I used to skip over because they felt indulgent. Salmon, berries, a fancy yogurt with a weird European name. I even bought the good bread, the kind you have to slice yourself and pretend you're in a rustic kitchen in Tuscany. I ate it standing in my own kitchen like it was communion. And something shifted. Not big, not dramatic, but real. I made a rule for myself. Every dollar I used to send to them on the first of the month, it now goes into my savings. I set up an automatic transfer for the same amount. $300, like muscle memory, but for healing. Watching that money land in my own account felt like I was unlocking a door that had been nailed shut for years. I booked a dentist appointment I'd been putting off for over a year. I scheduled a therapy session with a woman who sounded steady over the phone and said, "Oh, boundaries and guilt? That's half my client list." I laughed. She didn't. It made me like her more. The temptation to explain was loud. To draft a long, calm message with numbered bullet points and perfectly composed I statements. I almost did it. But then I remembered what my therapist said during our first call. Explaining to people committed to misunderstanding you is just performance art. I didn't have the energy. But the ache? That stuck around. It wasn't just about money. It never was. It was about the version of my family I kept trying to build. With my silence. With my savings. With my willingness to believe that if I just gave a little more, time, patience, groceries, love, they'd finally look at me and see me. Not the background music, not the backup plan, not the reliable one. Just Max. 2 weeks after the showdown, the calls slowed. The guilt didn't, but it got quieter. More like static than sirens. I expected them to be angry. What I didn't expect was the spin to go public. A neighbor texted me, "Your mom posted again." Screenshot attached. There it was. Raising kids is hard when they forget your sacrifices. Some people think everything is about money. Praying hands emoji. 14 comments, all support, all sympathy, all for them. Aunt Rita posted some vaguely spiritual quote about forgiveness and family. Cole, he posted a mirror selfie with new sneakers and the caption, "Self-made." I stared at that one a while. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I went for a run. Not because I was training for anything, not to be dramatic, but because my body needed somewhere to put the feeling of being rewritten in real time. 3 miles turned into 4. I listened to a podcast about boundaries. The host said, "Say no without a paragraph." I paused the episode and repeated it out loud. No, just that. It felt like magic. The third Sunday came like clockwork. The Sunday I used to send gas money without a second thought. $80 like tossing breadcrumbs into a pit, hoping silence would sprout love. This time, I didn't send a thing. Instead, I took the long way home from the grocery store and drove past my parents' house. Old muscle memory. Habit, maybe. Or maybe something like grief. I parked a street away and just sat there. Engine off, AC humming, hands loose on the steering wheel. Through the window, I saw them, my parents, Cole, Aunt Rita, gathered around the table. My chair was empty, like I'd died and they'd just adjusted the seating. Nobody looked sad. Cole laughed about something. Mom was sipping from her favorite chipped mug like nothing had ever happened. Dad leaned back in his chair, relaxed. They weren't mourning me. They weren't even missing me. They were doing what they always did, rewriting the script to make the story easier to live with. I didn't cry, but something twisted in my chest like a wet rag. Not regret exactly, more like mourning. Mourning the fantasy family I thought I could earn if I just paid enough, fixed enough, was enough. Turns out, the ledger didn't end in love, just in expectation. The next morning my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I played it. It was Dad's coworker's wife, the one who gave Mom the candle that one Christmas. Her voice was soft but firm. "Max, your parents are under a lot of stress right now. If you could just—" I hung up, called her back. "Hi," I said. "No." She blinked through the phone. "You didn't even let me finish." "I didn't need to," I replied. "No is a full sentence," she sputtered. I didn't wait for her to gather herself. I hung up and stood in my kitchen, barefoot on the tile, and felt okay. Better than okay. Free. A week later, a letter arrived in my mailbox, not addressed to me, but to my parents. Some old insurance document or bill. I was still their listed address from when Cole used mine for a temporary situation and never updated his forms. I opened it without thinking. Overdue balance, $312, the kind of balance I used to pay without blinking. I put it on the counter, stared at it. 1 year ago, I would have Venmo'd the amount and called it peacekeeping. This time, I forwarded it to both Mom and Dad with a single subject line. "This is your bill, not mine." Mom replied, "Why are you being cruel?" I opened a reply window, typed and deleted 20 versions of "I'm not." Then I closed the laptop, went for another run, 5 miles this time. When I got back, a new email had landed. From Cole. Subject, "Be real, bro." The message read, "We all know you like holding this over us. You always wanted to be the hero. Congrats. You win." I stared at those words. There it was, the thing they couldn't say out loud but always made me feel. That my help was a power play. That my money came with strings. That being dependable meant I must be secretly smug. That I must want them to owe me. Like they couldn't imagine anyone giving without the expectation of control. Because that's how they operate. I replied with one sentence, "I wanted to be your son." No emoji. No punctuation flourish. Just the truth. He didn't write back. That night, I made another rule. Silly, maybe, but it worked. No banking app after 9 p.m., because there is nothing in there that can fix your family at 9:01. You'd be surprised how many times a person can reframe your exhaustion as betrayal. How many ways someone can take your no and translate it into "how dare you." After Cole's email, things went quiet for a week. I knew that wasn't peace. It was recalibration. Then the narrative started shifting again. Subtle at first. A text from Dad. "We forgive you." Like I'd sinned. Like pulling away from codependency required penance. Like saying no meant I'd broken something sacred. I didn't reply. I didn't need to reply. Because here's what I'd started to realize. Silence is not an invitation. It's not a blank check. It's just silence. And I didn't owe anyone a monologue to justify my own healing. Still, the grief hid in strange places. At the grocery store, reaching for the pasta I used to avoid because it felt too fancy. On a walk, passing a house with the wind chimes like the ones on my parents' porch, I'd stop and feel this tightness in my throat. Not regret, not even guilt, just loss. Because you don't just walk away from a system, you leave a world you helped maintain. You leave versions of yourself behind. I kept going to therapy. I said things I didn't know were still stuck inside me. I said, I thought if I just did enough they'd see me. I said, I thought being reliable would make me irreplaceable. I said, they only call when they need something. My therapist nodded. She didn't try to spin it. She didn't offer a silver lining. She just said, that sounds lonely. It is. But I also started noticing what came in when the noise stopped. Pancakes on Sunday. Sleep without interruption. A budget that included joy, not just survival. Friends I hadn't seen in months who texted, you seem lighter. A coworker who said, you smiled today, like for real. I didn't realize how tightly I'd been wound until I wasn't anymore. I even started a new habit. On the first of the month, when my old transfers would have gone out, I put the same amounts into a savings account labeled Max's Life. It sounds cheesy, but watching that balance rise, 300, 600, 900, it did something. It reminded me I existed outside of service, that I had a future not tethered to someone else's urgency. There were backslides, of course. One night I found myself on my phone, scrolling through old photos, Christmases, birthdays, blurry shots of Cole grinning, Mom mid-laugh, Dad carving turkey like a commercial. For a second, I thought about sending an apology, just to reset the vibe, just to hear someone say, we miss you. But I didn't, because I knew what would happen. They wouldn't say, we miss you. They'd say, we forgive you. And then the cycle would restart. So instead, I turned off my phone, made tea. Watched the rain. Small choices, big impact. 3 Sundays later, my phone lit up again. A new group chat had been made. Family reset. No Cole this time. Just Mom and Dad. The message, let's start over. We miss our son. Come to dinner. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel joy. I felt a question forming, one that had been rising for weeks. If I go, will it be different? Or will it be a rerun with better lighting? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I made another rule for myself. No returning to places that require you to shrink. And just like that, I knew my answer. I didn't go to dinner. I didn't send a message either. I just didn't show up. And for once, I didn't feel guilty. I went for a run that night instead. 4 miles, no music, just my breath, my feet, and the sound of choosing myself. The next morning, there were no missed calls, no guilt-laced voicemails, just a quiet inbox. That silence, for the first time, felt like peace. I still keep the binder. It lives in my closet, tucked behind old tax forms and spare light bulbs. I haven't opened it in weeks. I don't need to. It did its job. It reminded me that what I gave mattered, even if they never said so. Mom still texts sometimes, photos of their dog, forwarded memes. Dad sent one email last month with a subject line that just said, "Hope you're well." I read it. I didn't reply, not because I'm angry, because I'm not ready. Maybe one day we'll talk again. Maybe they'll learn how to ask instead of expect. Maybe Cole will learn how to stand on his own without treating love like a vending machine. Or maybe not. That's not mine to fix anymore. Here's what I know now. I can be dependable without being disposable. I can say no without writing an essay. And I can love my family without bankrupting myself to prove it. I'm not sending money anymore. Not out of spite, not out of vengeance, just out of respect. For myself, my time, my effort, my life. If they ever come to me with honesty and respect, I'll listen. I always will. But if they come with guilt, denial, or the same old script, the answer is simple. No.